sore throat. Okay, so welcome to this seventh lecture on stochastic and neural models for speech recognition. So up to now, what we have seen is how hidden Markov model they capture the temporal variabilities which are present in speech. Okay. So those temporal variabilities are nothing but dynamic variability. So over time, okay, how the characteristics of the feature vector changes, those changes are captured by the hidden Markov model, and it operates under the assumption that the data is independent, is dependent. Okay, so in the sense that the present sample depends on the previous one sample or two sample or three sample or so on. In case of dependency only on the previous one sample, then it is first order Markovian. If it's on previous two samples, then it is second order Markovian, and so on. So we have also seen that in HMM the states are hidden, that is we can't directly observe the states, but the states emit some feature vectors. Those feature vectors can be observed. So from the feature vectors we have to somehow decode the optimal state sequence. We have seen three problems. I have told you about the first problem where if you are given some HMM model with some parameters, and if I am given some data, how do I calculate the likelihood of the given data coming from the given HMM? So for that we have used forward backward algorithm. So it operates on the lattices. So it is, and to calculate this likelihood, it's a combinatoric explosion problem. So there are a lot of state sequences, possible state sequences. So there is an efficient way to calculate that likelihood. That is this forward backward algorithm. So we have seen something called as lattice, where lattice is nothing but you have the hidden states. So you unwrap the states over the over time. Okay, so over the time in which we are interested. So that is nothing but lattices, and we define some forward variable, backward variable alpha and beta and so on, and we have seen some recursion relationship. Okay, so and using the forward and backward variables, we were able to compute the likelihood of the data. And so this algorithm gives us, actually we wanted just one formula, but this algorithm gives us n such formulas. So we can use any one of the formulas to compute the likelihood. And after that we have seen how to estimate the HMM parameters. I have stopped at E step, and I didn't explain the E step in detail because I thought it would be, I mean, you will be able to deduce how the posteriors have come and the Q functions of each of the parameters, how they had come. But after the class, some people asked, okay, so will how is it coming like this? So I've created scribe notes. I'll send you. It's in the SharePoint. Okay, so you can go and look into it, and we'll go through the E step in much detail in this class, and we'll look at the maximization step. Okay, and maximization step to get the optimal parameters. Those are nothing but initial state probability, the transition probability, the states densities parameters. Okay, that is, if it is Gaussian, okay, then it's only mean and variance. If it is Gaussian mixture model, then for each of the state we will have a Gaussian mixture model. So we have to find parameters, the mixture weights, the parameters, the mixture weights, the parameters, the means, the covariances, and so on. So we'll look into it in more detail. Okay. So last class we have seen only on normal density. If the state density is just a simple normal density. Now in this class we'll look at both normal density and something called as discrete density, and we'll also look at GMM if the state density is nothing but a GMM. So we'll look at all three cases: normal, discrete density, and GMM. Okay. So the two problems are over. One is computing the likelihood, the other one is computing the HMM parameters. Now the third problem, this is one of the most important. I mean, all three are important, but this is also equally important. Okay. So that is Viterbi decoding. So given the data and the HMM model parameters and so on, so I know that okay, this HMM is generating this data. So if I ask a question, okay, so which are the states which are generating this data? I want the sequence. Okay, so how do we get that best possible state sequence given the observation vector and the model parameters? So and even so, as I told you, even in the case of computing the likelihood, it is a combinatoric explosion problem. Even Viterbi decoding, it is a even to find the best possible state sequence, it's a combinatoric explosion problem, because you have to look at all possible state sequence and see the likelihood of each of the state sequence, and you have to choose which is the maximum. So that's why it is computationally demanding. So Viterbi decoding gives us an answer. Okay, so it is like forward backward algorithm. Viterbi decoding is a simpler way to calculate. It is computationally more efficient way to calculate the best possible state sequence. And if you remember when we so finally, so that will close the chapter on HMM up to the fourth point. Okay, so we are able to get the likelihood, we are able to get the best possible state sequence, and we are able to estimate the parameters of HMM, and that's all. HMM is done. But when we were looking at GMM 3-4 classes back, we saw some similarities. The GMM is somewhat similar to k-means algorithm. We saw that okay, in GMM there is something called a soft decisioning. In k-means it's a hard decisioning. So similarly for HMM also there is something called a segmental k-means. Okay, so we'll see we'll draw parallels between segmental k-means and HMM, and we'll compare these two entities. Okay, so that will be the agenda for today. And this is where we were in last class when we were given some data and we were asked to estimate these parameters. And as I told you, the parameters are nothing but the initial state densities, that is pi, and the transition probability from one state to another state, that is Aij, and the density, the parameters of the density, okay, that is Bi. Okay, I use the parameter and the density interchangeably in this context, but please bear with me. Okay, so it should ideally be, instead of BA, it should ideally be mu I and sigma I. Okay, so I'll just and there is a constraint on A's and pi's, okay, because initially it should be in one of the states. So which means the pi, the entries of pi should sum to 1. It's a long vector, and the length of the vector is the number of states, and initially it should be in any one of the states. So that's why it should sum to 1. And similarly, even the transition from a particular state, it can either stay in that state or go to any other state. So the outgoing transitions probability also should sum to 1. So these are the two constraints that we should consider when doing any form of estimation, or because mostly people when they derive Q function, they forget about the constraint, okay, and that will lead to some incorrect answers. So we have to consider it as a constraint optimization problem, and like we did for GMM, where the mixture weight should sum to 1. So we added it, added the constraint into the Lagrangian, and then we took partial derivative. So those things have to be considered. Okay, so and as it's a latent variable problem, we have to apply expectation maximization procedure. The procedure is nothing but, okay, we have to initialize some values for theta. Let's call it as theta k, for the parameters, and we should obtain the Q function. The Q function is nothing but expectation over z given x theta k on the joint density, log of the joint density of hidden variable and the observed variable. And once this Q function is obtained, you just maximize this, because this is a simple convex function. You will get an absolute global maxima or something, okay. Maybe a local maxima, but anyhow. And once this new parameter is obtained, you estimate the Q function again using the new parameter, okay, and then maximize. So this has to be repeated for some 30-40 iterations or so on. And this procedure is expected to converge in certain number of steps, okay, because you at every step you increase likelihood value, okay. So convergence is guaranteed. And we have seen that, see, even in GMM, when the data is given and when the hidden variables are given, we have to derive the Q function. So for the Q function, we need to get the z given x theta k, the density, and the joint density of data and the hidden variables, that is p of xz. And one more thing is, we need to, before doing all this thing, we need to characterize z, okay, how z should be, okay. In case of GMM, it the z is specified, okay, to which mixture component the data belongs to, okay. In case of HMM, similar way, okay. So we have one latent variable for each of the data sample, and each latent variable will tell you from which state that feature vector had come from. For example, z1 will tell you, okay, from which state x1 had come from, and z2 will tell you from which state x2 had come from, and so on, okay. And the Q function, okay, that is what we are interested in right now. So the Q function is nothing but, as I told you, expectation over the joint likelihood, and this is what the likelihood was, okay. So after this, we have seen this in the last class, okay. So after this, we have just told, I just told you, when you take expectation, it just comes like this, okay. I thought it was self-understood, but okay, let's dive into this expression more detail. So I have so I have written the details in the scribe. I will zoom out. Yeah, this is what the expression that I showed in the slide, okay, the same thing. And here it is nothing but summation over all the possible state sequence, where capital SS is nothing but it is a set of all possible state sequence, and if it's a set, it should have elements. So the elements are nothing but, and how many elements are there? So number of states power how many number of samples are there, that is ns power n elements are there, and each element is a vector of length n, okay. And so let's represent one of the element of this SS by a vector, okay. This is a simple n length vector, okay. So S1 is nothing but that sequence, for that sequence, what is the first state, second state, third state, nth state, and so on. So that vector is nothing but just one element of the set capital SS, okay. And as I told you that Z is a hidden variable which denotes the state from which the data had come from, and it's like a one-arc vector, okay. So to be precise, we shouldn't write the joint density like this. It should be interpreted like this actually, because if you see this expression, okay, there is no z term at all. There is only the parameters theta and whatever the x, okay, but there is no z term in this. so that's why if you remember GMM, okay, so we had the power which tells you the mixture selection, okay. Similarly, okay, that is what we have to do even for HMM when we have to write the joint density of hidden in the observed random variable. We should power each of the terms by its corresponding hidden variable's entry, okay. So that is what this means. So Z1 S1 means the entry of Z for this Z1 vector, you take the first S1's entry, okay, and you keep that as a power for pi S1 BS1 X1, okay, and similarly, okay. So this is what is the actual, I mean, to be precise, okay, we should write it like this, okay, but for a shorthand notation, and it is easy for us to write like this and then go. So I thought that will be clear, but it was not, so that's why I am explaining it again. Okay, so here it is nothing but it has two states, okay. One at the previous instant, I mean, it should transit from some previous state Sn minus 1 and to the next state Sn. So that's why two hidden variables are involved in this. So Zn minus 1 and Zn, okay, for the past state and the present state, okay. And here only one state is involved, so that's why one entry of the hidden random variable is there. Okay, so now we can take log inside the expectation. Okay, so taking log for this joint density. So when you do that, all these powers will come here, and whatever the terms which are here will go inside. Okay, so this is a product, so that's why I separated into two sums, and this is a product, so that's why I kept it as a sum. And even here, okay, this entire expression will come inside the sum, okay, inside the sum, okay. Now this is the log of joint density of data and hidden variables. Now we have to take expectation with respect to this density function, and that's how you get the Q function. So we have to take that, but before that, let's see what see, Z is a hidden variable which is a one-not vector, so which means you either have 1 or 0, okay. So that's why if you take expectation with respect to some density on any function, then that what is the probability of the variable, the random variable taking the value 1 into that function at value 1 plus probability of that variable taking value 0 into the function at value 0. If you see, this function will be 0 always, okay, because you have z's, okay, it's not 1 plus z or 2 plus z or something, okay, or z is not in any other thing. So when we substitute 0 here, this entire term will be 0, so we don't have to worry anything about the second term at all. We should worry only about the first term, okay. So let's see what that first term is, okay. Hmm. Which one? Huh? Okay. See, there is one more detail with this. When you take some over log, that's yeah, maybe I shouldn't have written like this, but SS, the small SS is nothing but it's a one-not vector. So in that summation, only one of the term will be used. So when it is summed, you will actually have. That's why I have written here a bit more clearly. Okay, when you, yeah, maybe I was a bit more enthusiastic and wrote the entire expression at the beginning. Okay, so I have written it here. Okay, so if you take this summation, it maybe I'll correct the scribes with the new thing. Okay, because that will expand the terms a bit more. I don't know how to simplify it and write. Okay, it's a bit complicated. Okay, so anyhow, now let's look at this. Okay. So 1 S1 into log of pi S1. So because 1 power S1. So now this expression that we kept here, and wherever log pxz is there, substitute 1 for z in that expression. So we are taking only for the pi, the parameter pi. So we'll take q functions for each of the parameters separately. First for pi, then for a's, and then for whatever the parameters which are there in b's. Okay. This is the only term which is involving the pi, and so we take only that, and we should substitute 1 for the z. So we have done that, and when you take the sum over this expression, maybe this is where only after this you can take the log inside. Up to here we should keep the log outside only. So only after this we should take the log inside, because in each and every sum only one of the term will be non-zero. Okay, the rest of the terms will be 0 because of this z being substituted with its corresponding value. Okay, so and that's why the summation over all possible state sequence becomes only on summation over the number of states only. Even here, to be precise, it should be I think you will have the sum n by ns times. Okay, but it's a constant. So if that is a constant, then during optimization it will not get. I mean, it doesn't get involved. So we can neglect that one. And this is what we defined it as initial state posteriors, that is gamma 1j, because even in GMM we saw the mixture posterior, and similarly even here we have for this pi we have some posterior called as initial state posteriors. Okay, so this is a q function. Okay, and similarly we can derive for a's and so that's how we get something like this. Okay, and similarly even for a's, if you take partial derivative, I mean if you take this expectation inside, then whatever the term you get here, you can define it as some posterior zeta n ij, and that is called as transition posterior. And for other parameters, that is mu and sigma for each of the states, we have something like this, and this can be defined as just state posterior. Okay, and now so all the q functions are defined, and we know all the constraints and so on. So the next step is to take Lagrangian of the q function and take derivative of that and set it to 0, and then find the optimal parameters. But before that, there are some things that we don't know how to calculate. For example, this posterior and this posterior and this posterior. So how do we calculate that? So we'll look at that in this thing. So this the posterior gamma nj. See, we had 3 posterior, right? One is initial state posterior and the state posterior. Both are nothing but one and the same. If you substitute n to be 1, then the state posterior becomes initial state posterior. So it's better to deal with only one of them, which is the general case, which is this gamma nj. Okay, so this is nothing but for given the feature vector given the feature vector sequence, what is the probability that the nth vector is coming from jth state, okay, the state j, okay. So this has to be calculated. So this can be done easily using this forward and backward variables. So we have already defined these forward and backward variables in the last class when we discussed about likelihood computation. So this is alpha nj is nothing but from the beginning up to the nth feature vector, what is the probability that that HMM model is generating that data, and it should be in jth state at time instant n, and similarly for beta also, okay. So here it is a condition, okay. So we have seen that gamma nj is nothing but this term. So this is nothing but for example, I'll just write see p of a given b is nothing but p of ab given p of b, okay, which is nothing but p of ab given p of ab summed over all entries of a. So the same formula I have so the same formula I have used here. So the simple base formula. So this conditional is expressed as joint by marginal, and this can still be expressed as marginalizing over the joint density, and that's what I have written on the board. And now we need to find the numerator, okay. So if we can find the numerator, and if we just normalize it over one of the variable, then we can get the denominator. So how do we find the numerator? The numerator can be split into two parts, again using Bayes rule. So the joint into the joint can be written as conditional into marginal, and these so this contains the vectors 1 to n, capital N. So we know that given the see up to see in hidden Markov model, we are right now working only on the first order Markovian assumption. So if we can remove that assumption, that is if we condition on that assumption, then we can take the data to be independent, okay. So that is what we are doing here, okay. So we condition that, okay, the state is coming from, I mean the nth vector is coming from here, which means, okay, the previous up to that point, okay, the these are no, these are dependent from 1 to capital N, but if we condition on this, okay, we can separate the data into two, okay, 1 to n and from n plus 1 to the last vector. So that's what I have done here, and this is nothing but, so we can club these two things together, and this is nothing but alpha nj, and this is nothing but beta nj. Now we got the term for numerator. So and to get the denominator, we have to marginalize over whatever the state we have, that is state index is j here. So just summing over j, alpha nj, beta nj. Just to avoid conflict of notation, I have changed the subscript from the index from j to j dash, okay. So this is how we calculate the posterior, initial state posterior, as well as whatever the state posterior, state posteriors at whatever the time you want, okay. And this is much more complicated. I had written a big expression, but I didn't want to confuse you, so just intuitively you can understand. So this is nothing but some posterior function which will tell you, see, I have got some capital N number of vectors. At nth time, it should be in ith state, and it should go to jth state in the next time instant. That's what, and it should generate all the feature vectors. So that is what or it tells, okay, I don't care whatever how the other feature vectors are generated. I want the feature vector to at nth feature vector to be emitted from the first state, ith state, and n plus 1th feature vector to be emitted from jth state. So that is what this expression means. So we can tell that now earlier we had only one condition, that is I want the nth vector to be coming from jth state, that's all. Now we have two conditions. One is the transition, that is the condition on transition from ith state to jth state. So that's why we have two conditions, and that's why we have up to nth small nth vector. I wanted to calculate the likelihood, that is nothing but alpha and j. Then it should transit from I to j, so that is this probability, and it should generate the jth state should generate the n plus 1th vector, that is given by this, and I don't care whatever the rest happens. So that is nothing but beta n plus 1. And again, to normalize it, we have to sum this over whatever the two variables that we have. So the two variables are nothing but I and j, the two indices. So it can be from any of the I and any of the jth state, okay, at any time n. No. So if we normalize this, then we get the transition posteriors, okay. So now we'll look at the maximization step for this HMM. So as I told you, we have three parameters, four parameters. One is pi, the other is a, and the other is mu and sigma. Okay. So for pi, we take the Q function of the Q function which involves only the terms pi, the terms which are having only pi. Okay. Because if you take partial derivative with respect to other term, everything else will be 0. So we just are interested in only this term. Okay. So this is the only term which involves pi, and we have the constraint that the entries of pi should sum to 1. So it's a constraint optimization problem, and this is how you construct the Lagrangian, the objective function plus lambda into the constraint. This is the Lagrangian multiplier. Now you take partial derivative with respect to the, each entries of the pi, and set it to 0. Now this so this is sum over all j. So when you take partial derivative with respect to j dash, so this entire expression we have to take partial derivative and set it to 0. So when you take out of all this sum, only j dash entry will remain, and that is nothing but gamma 1 j dash, and when you take partial derivative of this with respect to pi j dash, it will be 1 by pi j dash plus lambda into, among all these sum only one of the sum will be there, and when you take partial, that is the j dash term, and when you take partial derivative with respect to pi j dash, it is nothing but 1. Okay. So we'll just remove this one, and this lambda is nothing but this pi can be expressed as, if we take this one here, minus lambda, then by lambda. So this is how you get. Okay. So now we need to find the Lagrangian multiplier. So for that we use a constraint again. So we know the constraint that, okay, if you sum over all this j dash, then it should be equal to 1. So we do the same thing here. Okay, so if you sum over all the j dash and sum over all the j dash, this term will be 1. Okay, and this lambda moves here, and so we get lambda to be minus whatever the j dash, gamma 1 of j dash. So now you substitute this back into this, I mean before taking the sum, okay, whatever the expression was there, just substitute it back, we get the initial state probability as gamma by sum over gamma. Okay. And similarly, even for this transition probability, we have to do the same procedure. Here two summations are involved, but anyhow, see, it's a if you take partial derivative with respect to aij, these two summations will collapse to only, even though how many whatever the number of terms are there, it will, if you take partial derivative with respect to some I dash j dash, only one of the term will be there. Okay, among all n square terms, only one of the term will be there. So that's why here we have only one of the term, which is the zeta n ij divided by aij plus lambda into plus lambda is equal to 0, and here we have one more sum here. So over n, that sum remains the same. So and to find the Lagrangian multiplier lambda, we just have to sum over that expression again, and substitute the value of the Lagrangian multiplier back into that equation. So we get something like this. So this is nothing but your transition estimate of the transition probability. Okay, and the similar way we can derive the estimate for the mean of each of the states. Okay, so for j dash state, we just have to weigh each of the feature vector with respect to the posterior. The posterior just tells you that, okay, how likely is the data to come from that state. So among whatever the feature vectors you have, so you can't directly sum all these things together. You have to weigh it according to the posterior. The gamma nj is sometimes called as occupation posterior. Okay, so you have to weigh it according to the occupation posterior. And similarly, the covariance matrix sigma j dash is nothing but the cross product of x minus mu thing weighed over the state occupation posterior. So this completes the HMM for normal density state. Okay, the state having normal density. Okay, but there are cases where you can complicate the density function. For example, okay, GMM, you can keep mixture of Gaussians. Okay, instead of having a single Gaussian, that's what you have seen until now. You can have mixture of Gaussian. Even that mixture of Gaussian, we don't know. Okay, which two. So in hidden Markov model, we don't know from which state the vector had come from. On top of that, we are introducing one more element of hiddenness, where in that state, even there you have multiple mixture components, to which mixture component that data would have come from. So there are two random variables. So one is denoted by z, that is nothing but the state, okay, whatever we have seen. The other one is delta. Okay, so that will tell you within that state, okay, to which mixture component would the data might have come from. Okay, so the same expression will I mean, the line of derivation is same for even in this case, but here there will be one more extra summation and one more index and one more element of hiddenness in this. So just to show you how it looks, okay, so this is how the Q function will look like. Okay, so earlier everything, see these two are the same. Okay, now whatever I have written for HM, wait, maybe I I'll show you. See, this is a Q function that we have written for HMM. Okay, sorry, P of xz. Okay, the joint density, whatever we have here. This is exactly the same here. Okay, you the joint density take log and then take expectation of this one. Okay, so now this is just the same, but here there are two hidden variables, z and delta. But if you see, the delta is not involved in any of the terms here, but ideally it should be involved here, because z will just tell you only about the state. Okay, but the mixture probability, the mixture, which of the mixture component should be selected, that selection is given by delta, and that is nothing but those entities are involved in this B term. So that's why I have given a superscript delta here. So this is these two are the only terms that will involve the hidden variable delta. The rest of the terms are having z's and so on. So, and I have given the expression for the density of this. This should not be called as density, but yeah, it is nothing but joint density of the hidden variables of the which denotes the mixture selection, and the data coming from that mixture. So that is nothing but this expression, omega m into normal density of mth mixture power whatever the random variable, hidden random variable, which denotes the mth mixture component selection. Okay, so you take product of all these capital M number of mixtures. So this is what we have earlier seen in GMO. So now when we introduce this product here and here, earlier whatever the number of when you take logarithm, this product changes into summation. Now whatever the number of summations you had earlier, you will now have one more summation. Okay, that's all, and you will have one more index for that summation, that is m. That's all. Okay, and this is how the Q function will look like. Okay, so the state occupation probability, okay, that the initial state, it doesn't involve any delta at all. Okay, there is no mixture in I mean, there is no GMM aspect in initial state computation. So it is just the same as in the previous case, but and even in the case of the transition probability, it doesn't involve any mixture selection issue. Okay, so even that is same. But the other stuff where you have the mixture weights as well as the mean and covariance of each of the mixture, there you will have some modifications in the posterior. Those modifications are nothing but those posteriors which are modified, they will have one more index now. Earlier it was only gamma ni, now it is gamma nim. So this will tell you what is the probability that this gamma nim will tell you what is the probability that the data had, all the data had been generated, and the nth vector is coming from ith state, and that too from mth mixture. Okay, the vector xn should come from ith state and mth mixture of the ith state. So that's all gamma nim means. Okay, so so these are the posteriors which are involved in this GMM HMM estimation, and in a similar way. Okay, so here taking partial derivative, and here even for this omega, you will have a constraint that sum over omega m, when summed over the index m should be equal to 1. So keep that constraint, and then take the Lagrangian and take partial derivative of that and set it to 0 to get the optimal parameters. So the procedure is same as that of the normal density HMM. So So this is nothing but your GMM HMM estimation, and we'll go to some more some other form of density. There we have dealt with two densities, one is normal and one is GMM. Now there is something called as discrete density. So what do you mean by discrete density? So it is relatively easier form of density for a computer to handle. Okay. Because in case of exponential family density functions, you need to compute the exponential term. So how does a computer evaluate an exponential term? It uses Taylor series. Taylor series up to some 6th order, 7th order, 10th order or something. So it is a bit more expensive. Okay. But this one, discrete density, and imagine, okay, for GMM it is mixture of m Gaussians, so the computations will be more, right? But discrete density is nothing but counting. Okay, it just okay, +1, +2, +3 and so on. So addition is a bit more easier in this case. So that's why discrete densities are were popular earlier. Okay, now due to all these high-end computers and GPUs, TPUs and so on. Okay, so people don't care. Okay, how whatever be the computation cost, they just wanted best performance. But earlier it was not the case, so that's why people preferred discrete density over the continuous density. So in case of discrete density, what happens is, whatever the vector you have, whatever the vectors you have, they are discretized. Discretized in the sense, see, you have a waveform, okay, so which is a continuous one, something like this, okay, and you have to store it in a computer. So what do? You just quantize each of these things at both at time axis and at whatever the S of t, amplitude axis. Okay, this is nothing but sampling. Okay, so we are not interested in that. We'll just take this as a discrete sample only. Something. But its amplitudes are continuous. So it might be 3.41678. 97 and so on. It is a real value. So what we have to do? So that can't be stored in the computer. Okay. So we have to quantize it to some level. Okay. So in speech normally it is a 16-bit sampling. Okay. So which means you have 2 power 16, which is 65536, right? So 65,000 levels are there. So if it is close to one of the level, for example 400th level, okay, 400th level might have value 1.5 or something. If it is 1.4996 or something, it is close to that level 1.5. So it is cut short or just elongated, okay, to fit to that quantization value. Similarly, okay, this I have told you in terms of a simple scalar value. Okay, so this is a simple scalar value, right? Now imagine a vector. Okay, if you have a vector which is having entries, and each of these entries are real numbers. So how do we quantize these real numbers? See, you can't set quantization levels for each of the dimensions. Then you will have, if you set that too for a speech vector, okay, the MFCC vector or whatever the LPC or any of the